Seats, please. Hey, 7th Fleet Blue Ridge team, it is my honor to introduce our Secretary of Defense. If you read his bio, it's spectacular, but what I'm going to tell you is between the lines. And I feel like I can do that because I've had various jobs working in the Pentagon with the Secretary of Defense, and he's also one of my professors back in grad school a long, long time ago. But I can distill his bio simply to this. Secretary Carter is an American patriot through and through. He's an innovator, and most of all, he cares deeply about the men and women who protect our country. He tries to keep it discreetly, but it's well-known fact how often he goes to Bethesda to visit the wounded warriors. And then also, any budgetary issue that crosses his desk, the first thing he's going to ask, how does that impact the men and women who defend our country? I know this for a fact because he's rejected a number of Navy issues because it didn't protect our men and women. So he cares very deeply about you. And without any further ado, I'd like to introduce the 25th Secretary of Defense, Secretary Carter. Sir.
Thanks, Joe. It is true. He and I go back a long ways, and of course, we were just talking earlier. By now, having been associated with this spectacular institution for a long time, I know most of its senior leadership well, so he and I have worked in several incarnations, but it does go back all the way to a time when he was a student. Obviously, he did pretty well. He's right about one thing, and that is that you are what I wake up for every morning. You're what I'm thinking about all the time. It's you, I know, that first of all make ours the finest fighting force the world has ever known. It's our people. I mean, our ships are wonderful, and but it's you. And when it comes to being in a place like India, it is you, and it's also it's what you stand for, which is built into you. One of the reasons that as I talk to people around the world, they say, I like working with your folks. And you say, why? And they say, well, because of the values that they bring, the way they conduct themselves, which is not only competent, but it's respectful of other people. They're easy and efficient to work with. We like working with them. And also, I think we're attractive as partners strategically, and I hear this also, and I just observe it from the fact that the United States has more friends, partners, and allies around the world than any other country. And indeed, most of those with whom we have differences, regular or occasion, have few or none at all. But we do, and it's not just because we're powerful. It's because of what we stand for and stand up for. So that's the first thing. Your well-being, that we don't send you into risk without thinking very carefully about the necessity of that, and but also how to make you successful, and making sure that you have everything you need to protect yourselves and win. And that to the extent we can, compatible with the profession of arms and the way we have to ask you to go away from your families for a long time and accept hardships, whatever we can do to make it possible for the very best Americans to be in our military, and once they're in, to stay in our military. The other thing I want to say to you today is talk to you about the importance of what you're doing right here, right now. First of all, you represent our style of strategic interaction. You're working with others to make a better world for everyone and a better world for all of our children. That's the American approach to things. It's not to carve things up. It's not to intimidate people, to coerce people, to exclude people. The American style has always been to include people in protecting us all. That's one of the reasons why people like working with us, and it's one of the reasons why we're effective at it. You're in a region right now which first of all, will be of great consequence, more than any other single region of the world, to America's future, because it's where half of the world's population lives and half of its economic activity is. But it's also a place that has illustrated for 7 straight decades now the strategic approach of the United States that I just described and that I'm so proud of, and that your presence here represents, namely one in which we have been playing a pivotal role in keeping peace and security in the Asia-Pacific region. Now, what has happened in those 70 years in this region, with the sole exception granted of North Korea? Country after country has risen and prospered, and whole continents that were once poor, people have been able to uplift themselves. Just think about that. Go back 50 years to 60, 70 years, Japan, South Korea, then Taiwan, remember, then Southeast Asia. Today, India, where we are now, China, also rising, prospering. That's good, we're for that. But it doesn't come for free. There has to be peace and stability for that to happen. And so we've been part of a system of creating that. And in essence, with the rebalance, which you've heard about, our emphasis on this region isn't just because it's about it important, but because we have a winning strategic approach, which is that. With respect to the Indians in particular, I'll just say this. You've been here now in India. You got a chance to meet with them. Here's think about ways in which we're compatible with this country. Here's a country of 1 billion people that's a democracy, that is a melting pot, but in which every piece of the melting pot is respected, where there's a civil society in which people openly debate and discuss and aren't repressed, and they do that in a really quite exuberant way here in India, where rule of law is important, whose approach is conditioned by its own history and its own uniqueness, but has a lot of overlap. Indian interests and ours, like any other country, aren't identical, but they overlap a lot. And so we're trying to take advantage of this moment to move forward that strategic convergence. We say that the U.S.-India relationship, for all the reasons I just said, size and fundamental compatibility, is going to be one of the defining relationships of the 21st century, worldwide, certainly with the United States. So that's why we're working on it so hard. And the last thing I'll say is the reason that we have to work on the U.S.-India relationship is simply historical. Because remember, India was born about 7 decades ago or so, and when it was born, its policy was not one that was to associate with the United States. It wasn't against the United States, but not to associate much with the United States. And so what that means is our militaries grew up separately, our technology systems grew up separately, and now when we want them to work together, we have to try to get the gears to match up. And that's not automatic. We have to work hard at that. So that's why we're working at it. That's why I'm here. That's why you're here. But it's a winning hand that you're playing out here. So thanks for who you are, and tell your families, please, next time you're in touch with them, that from me, but I'm really trying to speak for our whole country, thank you for what you're doing. And secondly, remember, you look back in years ahead and say, I remember that. I was part of the beginning of that. You will, I promise you, in the future, be thinking exactly that. So thanks, and now I think what I get to do is look each of you in the eye individually say thank you once again and give you the Ash Carter SecDef coins, which I used to be able to say were a rarity because they were new, but now it's been dragging on for a little while. But I gather they do fetch a little something on eBay, probably at ever decreasing price, but there you go. But I'm looking out on these faces here, and there isn't a single one that would ever think about selling the coin I'm about to give you. All right, come on up. First row.